Go.
Today our oral interactive will be on concentration camps and in history and re-education, and obviously the relationship to the novel.
The definition of a concentration camp is a place where large numbers of people, especially political prisoners or members of persecuted minorities, are deliberately imprisoned in a relatively small area with inadequate facilities, sometimes to provide forced labor or to await mass execution.
The living conditions of a concentration camp consist of the lack of food, poor diet, and hard labor. These caused prisoners to suffer from starvation and sickness. They lost weight, muscle tissue, and many thousands died. Others became too weak to work and were then murdered in the gas chambers. We're relating this to
Adolf Hitler.
Nazi Germany. The barracks were often damp, lice and rats were everywhere. As a result, epidemics of contagious diseases spread. So obviously not ideal living conditions and nothing you would want really as a society. So here are some facts and statistics for like things with relation to the novel.
So in the novel there are colonies, and colonies are those areas beyond Gilead that are permitted with radioactive toxins. Cleanup crews consist of incorrigibles, old or sterile women, and other expendable citizens not suited to the rigid caste system of a theocracy or the need for state breeders.
So basically, like if we compare,
It's okay.
So we can compare it to concentration camps during Nazi Germany and during the Second World War, where it was a certain type of people and it was aimed at a certain type or generalized around a certain person and standards and things. So, which is basically in the novel. So the evidence that we found in the novel is a quote. So, I saw your mother and where I said I felt jolted, grown up. I realized I'd been thinking of her as dead, not in prison. It was that film they showed us about the colonies. There was a close-up. It was her all right. She was wrapped up in one of those gray things, but I don't know. It was her. Thank God, I said. Why thank God, said Moira. I thought she was dead. She might as well be, said Moira. You shouldn't wish it for her. So basically, you should wish it for her. You should wish it. You should wish it for her. So basically,
It's showing how bad
it is. It's better off to be dead than to be living like that. These are just like numbers of the Jewish deaths in
different camps during
Second World War. So we can see that at least like the highest number was 1.6 million in one camp, and it can range from, and then they can be deported, and so obviously the numbers are in the thousands, and it's huge, and it's crazy.
Okay, so here we're comparing the colonies in the book to concentration camps during the Second World War. So the task in the colonies was clean up toxic waste, burn dead bodies, cotton picking, fruit harvesting. And then in concentration camps, the task would vary from administration tasks to heavy manual labor. And then in the colonies, so who were in the colonies were the unwomen. So they're mostly people they want to get rid of. That was a quote in the book. Incorrigibles, old sterile women, not suited for the system. And then in concentration camps, these were called prisoners. And there were German communists, socialists, social democrats, gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, persons accused of asocial or socially deviant. So yeah, so in both cases, basically, there were people trying to speak up or simply that wouldn't follow the new government.
The conditions of a colony are radioactive toxins, rotting bodies everywhere, the plague, toxic dumps, radiation spills, so like the futuristic of like the climate change and that whole effect on society and what we'll have to do or what might we have to do. The conditions in concentration camps where prisoners lived in old brick barracks, dampness, leaky roofs, straw mattresses, sorts of like rats and very minimal food. Oh, this is just like this one.
No, it's okay, it's okay. So in the colonies, the leaders were the commander and Serena Jordan. It's not really said. We're just assuming that those are the leaders. And then in the concentration camps, leaders, these are three different leaders from Auschwitz, Rudolf Haas, Arthur Lieben, and Joe Gretchen Bear. Yeah, and then also you can see that in the colonies in the book, it's not really talked about. It's kind of kept on the down low. Like when they mention them in the book, they only mention it like, oh, like I saw this in a movie. I saw the colonies in movies, but they never actually go to the colonies in the book, and it's kind of not really talked about. And then it's kind of the same case for concentration camps. Like I've done research about it, and like it said that many German wives didn't even know about the mass killings in the concentration camps, and like it was kind of kept on the down
Or
low.
it said that they don't know.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of like hush hush because they knew it was bad, and like they know it's bad, but they're given minimal. We don't even know if the evidence that they have is true.
Okay, so I just need to question what you meant by leaders, the commander, and Serena Joy.
Like, because leaders of the concentration camps, you have like leaders of German
Right.
concentration camps, and then the commander, he's like at the head of.
He's not a leader of the concentration.
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
but he's leader of the type of society related not to society, because we can't relate this to all of Germany, we can't relate that to all of Europe.
Serena Joy is not a leader of a concentration.
No, but she instilled as we debated last time, she had
Those names
a say.
are people who were like in charge of those camps, correct? Like those physical locales that housed all of the Jewish
I
captives,
think you
correct?
should put Hitler, if she were to put Hitler in the leaders, it wouldn't
Okay,
work
then
out.
like pretend Hitler was here, and then
Once again, they're not really.
they're not, but they have a certain status.
Sure, but it does, but they are not the ones running the camps, and that's what I need to emphasize.
Okay,
They
yeah.
are not the ones. If
Yeah.
I were
That's
to
not what they mean.
parallel some characters that were leaders, then I would probably parallel the ants,
Yeah, that's
okay? That's the closest character that, but Serena Joy is not standing over those prisoners, like,
But the ideology.
making sure that they're shoveling that radioactive waste. Neither is the commander. He doesn't even know what's really going on in the society. He's the one who's constructed the society, but he's not somebody who is implementing all of those rules in society. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? Keep going.
Oh, and they both take place like during war, which is both similar.
Re-education, so it's to educate again as for new purposes and to further remove traces of the discourse in the society before the handmaids are subjected to a re-identification process where their former identity is to be exchanged for a new one, more beneficial values and failure. So for re-education, I think for me, like when I was researching, it was kind of hard to relate it to the book in a way, but I found that when you re-educate someone's name in that aspect of the book, it's kind of taking away identity and reconstructing who they are and who they want, what Gilead wants them to be. So I thought that was good. This is cool. So re-education through labor relates to, in China, they had re-education through labor and it only recently will stop. So for prisoners and stuff. So a quote is, in recent years, the government has considered replacing the re-education through labor with a detention system that would essentially leave intact key features of the existing mechanism. An administrative detention system under the control of the Public Security Bureau that would exist parallel to the formal criminal system, allowing long-term detentions without the benefit of a trial and the due process of law. Reports suggest that a revised system would be known by a different name, would establish a maximum sentence, and in theory would allow some procedural rights such as access to counsel. So basically, when in relation to re-education and in China, is that you could go to jail or to a detention center for nothing or for no, you wouldn't be given the right to appear in court or to have any defendant or to fight for your case. So kind of goes with the whole like coming out of society and basic rights, which was actually, this was found on a human rights page.
So in relation to the novel, you are the transition generation, said Aunt Lydia. It is the hardest for you. We know the sacrifices you are being expected to make. It is hard when men revile you. For the ones who come after you, it will be easier. They will accept your duties with willing hearts, she did not say, because they will have no memories of any other way.
So basically, the re-education process is obviously harder for a Fred and like Moira because they're the first generation. They know what was before. But once the new generation comes in and the new children, it'll be different because that's the way they'll always live. That's why there's such a big tension in all these things. But like, for kind of like our discussion yesterday, how that's the way they see it and that's how society is. For the next generation, that's the only thing they will know. That's the only thing they will know. They won't know any different, so they won't be able to weigh the pros and cons. That will be their life, and that's how they are educated or raised. So, discussion questions? In what way do concentration camps and re-education parallel Margaret Atwood's novel? So, how does a concentration camp, how does re-education follow through with the novel? David?
Well, you explain how the concentration camp goes in relation with the colony because they're the same duties, usually the same type of environment is presented in both settings. In the re-education, it's the same thing because if you look at, let's say, the girls in the Red Center, they're not allowed to think about their past. They have a whole new identity, which goes with their re-education that happens sometimes in this.
Johan?
The idea of the Red Center, where they re-educate women, it's the same idea that whether they'll go, they'll re-educate completely, they'll change the handmaids to be like their names and things like that. So it's the exact same process.
In terms of re-education, they're forced to learn the ways that the new government or Gilead leaders want the society to work. So, like when you're victim blaming what's her face for getting raped, you're teaching them new morals to forget about what they just done.
Yeah, and also to like make the women into like mindless beings, just do what they're told, not meant to think.
So just a question, what kind of methods does Atwood explore to re-educate this new Gilead population? What methods are used by this totalitarian government to re-educate its people? Oh, never mind.
Brainwash, propaganda,
Sorry?
just propaganda.
Give me an example.
When they show them videos of concentration camps and the pornos and whatnot, and
Sure, that's very blatant, right? Like those pornographic movies, specifically why? To say, look what the old society was, okay? And look how we've moved beyond that, okay? Diego?
Is it like, for example, like using others as an example, like Janine, for example?
Sure.
Yeah.
Use a little bit more specific, what do you mean using?
Well,
others?
by using one of them as an example, the others see, okay, I don't want this to be my fate or whatever, so therefore I'm not gonna do whatever, in this case, Janine did. That way I won't suffer the consequences and.
Good, excellent. Laura?
So that'd be kind of like going with fear, like teaching with fear with the salvagings and the executions and stuff.
Excellent. Fear as a tactic, Taj.
They use like all of women as a whole, so if one falls out of place, the others will blame them.
Yes. Yes, that group mentality, right? We just think about it, like they are grouped as one, okay? They all speak in unison. They all have no names in terms of individual names, but they are all just handmaids, okay? David, you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to say, like, also, I was gonna add with the fear, yeah, with the wall that is being presented in the middle of the city, like.
Good, good, very, very prominent fear tactic, right? Like, you don't wanna end up like these people hanging on the wall, okay? So make sure you follow through with what we say. Emmer?
They take away their right of speech. So as you can tell in the center, they're not allowed to talk to each other, so they have to whisper. And whenever they're allowed to talk, they can only talk like robots. So God bless the seed and whatever. And
Yes, good. Very prescribed language, very controlled language, and that freedom of speech has definitely been lost. Excellent. Taj?
They also use like a familiar setting for the girls when they take that medication, so redo it over.
Yes, okay. I think I was looking for some of these responses on the test when I asked you, describe, chapter 1 and the setting and what the point was, the significance. A lot of you had either said, oh, it's the Ren Center, or you just said that it was a gymnasium. But the fact that it was an old gymnasium, okay, that is used in this new center called the Ren Center to kind of melt like that old familiarity with this new kind of established rules. It was purposely done, okay? Yes.
I think and from reading.
Yes.
So like the only things they know, well, it's obviously a new colony, but like future generations, the only thing they're going to know is this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The future generation will have no idea because things have been so limited. And that completely reminds me of, and you had mentioned concentration camps in China, okay? I don't know if you guys know the history of China, like in the 1980s, there was the Tiananmen Square protest, okay? It was basically when the poor lower class farmers of China protested against the government. And basically, there is this one shot of this man protesting in the big center square in Beijing, and the government brought in tanks.
Oh yeah, there wasn't a picture of
yes.
There's a video too.
This man, this farmer, defiantly stands in front of this big army tank.
when was that?
In 1986. I
There's a
believe,
video too.
okay? And everywhere the tank moves, he veers in order to stand right smack in the middle of that path, because he is adamant about his message. And thousands of people were massacred in that event. Okay?
Were they trampled by the tank?
And shot down, gun machined down, burned villages completely. Okay? The new generation of Chinese that are growing up, only recently did Google Google even allowed into China, right? But if you typed in Tiananmen Square massacre,
Nothing comes up.
nothing existed.
This happens today too.
No,
Yes.
even now, they know how to
For
block.
sure.
There's a gigantic prison break happened in Egypt not long ago, and that's where Morsi came out. And I googled about it, and that was the biggest break out of prison breakout in history of prison breakouts, and it was not mentioned.
And it's not mentioned. And so it's this idea of who is controlling our information.
The triangle.
How is that affecting? How is that affecting our knowledge, right? The truth, if you will, okay, in terms of our history. And it's very interesting, okay? So make sure,
It's Illuminati.
we think about that. Okay, I know Taj is with his Illuminati sign. Is that what you're doing?
Illuminati's not real. US government.
It's in the $1 bill.
Well, me too.
What was this?
Second question.
Anything else?
And you
Anything
see
else?
signs.
Okay.
Make sure we realize that concentration camps, I know when we think of concentration camps, we think immediately of World War II.
Auschwitz.
But they're
There
everywhere.
have been many more
Vancouver.
instances.
Yes.
It's
Gulags.
the camps where you go to study.
Okay.
You can't.
Sorry?
Gulags.
Okay. Okay, they're
Goulash.
everywhere. So it's Canada's history has concentration camps, okay?
Native reserve.
Does have
You
concentration
just
camps.
start with the numbers.
Yes.
Like it's the number of services per like million.
Thank you, girls. Next up.